It's incredible. Still hasn't fully set in for myself and so many. I mean, I keep getting phone calls throughout the week from people in my life, my dad being one of them, who has to remind me, like, hey, Duke's in the Final Four. That's right. We are in the Final Four. We could still win a national championship this year. Let's go.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us today on Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. Today is Locked On Blue Devils talking about Duke basketball in the Final Four, and that is not an April Fool's joke for you. We get to play basketball this weekend in San Antonio against the Houston Cougars, and if we win, we've got the opportunity to go on to the national championship game on Monday. If you haven't done so already, let me tell you about Locked On Blue Devils, a daily podcast devoted to everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. Please be sure that you follow and subscribe to our podcast for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. If you're listening on the Apple Podcast platform, take a moment, hit pause, leave us a 5-star rating and written review. The algorithms love when you take the time to do that, and I'm certainly grateful and appreciative of that as well. We love giving 5-Star Friday shout-outs to those of you that have left us those 5-star reviews, so thank you for your support there. Also, we continue to skyrocket this month on the YouTube platform, and that means the world to me. Let's keep growing that Locked On Blue Devils YouTube community. Like these videos, share them with your friends, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. On today's show, Raul Clement from the Devil's Den podcast is back with us. We're talking about this amazing run that Duke basketball has been on, so let's bring him on into the program. And my friend, we get to talk about Duke playing basketball for yet another week. And like I said in the open there, it's not an April Fool's joke today, man. Like, we get to see our team play this weekend.
Yeah, it's an incredible feeling, man. I just love it when you win that Elite Eight game and you get to sit there for a full week and just kind of bask in the glory, watch a lot of videos on YouTube, like, previews of the game, interviews with Jon Scheyer, all that stuff, just kind of taking the team.
Yeah, just yesterday, Jon Scheyer makes his world tour. He's on the Dan Patrick Show. He's with Pat McAfee. I mean, he's all over the place. So much content for us to be consuming. That's why I love people checking out this show here this week and the work that you're doing. A lot of time to be discussing these big-time matchups that Duke has ahead of them. And here they are with the Final Four appearance in the third season of head coach Jon Scheyer. I mean, when you look at what he's been able to do, he's one win shy of outright owning the best start to a career. That's wild to think about. The pressure that he must have been feeling taking over for Coach K, knowing that he's got to be himself and not Mike Krzyzewski. But those are really big shoes to fill. It's really hard to win basketball games. And here we are. Our coach is one win shy of being outright in a land of his own as the best start to a coaching career there's been.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously he took over a strong program in a good place, but you have to continue that with your recruiting. You have to continue with that with your coaching. We've seen many times where a coach has taken over from a strong program and the program has just kind of gone into the toilet, right? So it's easier said than done. And just getting talent is not enough either. I mean, you can look at coaches who have had loaded rosters over the year and over the years, and it's just they've not maximized their potential. And I think Jon Scheyer has absolutely done that pretty much every year, but especially with this team.
Yeah, and there have been injuries along the way for various teams that he's had to deal with. He's had the staff change at times with guys going to take other jobs. And now within the season, Jay Lucas has departed in his own. At first, I'm thinking about someone like Emil Jefferson going to the Boston Celtics and having to bring somebody else in. And the outside hires that you're making this day and age, hiring the first general manager in Duke history, the transfer portal being as crazy as it is. This week, the portal is popping off like crazy, and you're not hearing anything about Duke, which I love because I do believe calls are happening behind closed doors and things are being said and like plans are starting to be made, but that's not going to be a distraction whatsoever for this team, man.
Yeah, you can just watch the Duke Blue Planet content and just see that this team is completely locked in. Even the guys who are on the bench and not getting big minutes are just celebrating like they're having the time of their life. I think he's gotten real buy-in just up and down the roster and through the staff and all that. I'm sure maybe we will have a departure or two over the offseason, but you're not hearing the same kind of buzz around that stuff that you heard last offseason.
Without a doubt. I mean, look, when we look at what the Duke team was able to do throughout this postseason run, more and more people are starting to get eyeballs on this roster. We're seeing more guys being mentioned in kind of draft conversations. From a Duke perspective, that's certainly going to have an impact in decisions that players make once the season comes to a close because of how well Duke's doing. But I want to go back to that game against Alabama, a 20-point win for Duke in the Elite Eight to punch their ticket to the 18th Final Four in school history. So many different things jump out when you look at this game. And when you look at a team like Alabama that made 25 three-pointers in the game prior against BYU, Duke running them off the three-point line as effectively as they would. Is that the one thing that kind of jumps out to you, Raul, or what's kind of that one big stat or number that you kind of look back and you're like, holy cow, man, that was incredibly impressive. Duke was able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the previous game and they made the 25 threes, like you said, but they also got up, 51 attempts, which
Yeah.
is absurd for a college game. So, we limited them to 32 attempts and they didn't shoot a good percentage from three. And I think it was just Duke's switchability and size that really bothered them. And you could especially see that with their guards. None of their guards really had a good game. Sears in particular really struggled.
Yeah, that was big to take him out of the game. I mean, that's an All-American that we're talking about that typically carries the load for Alabama, and for Duke to be as dialed in and locked in and making sure he wasn't going to be the one to beat them, I thought was so critical for what Duke was trying to do. The other thing that I wanted to mention with this Duke team in particular that I thought was incredibly impressive, how about winning the battle of the boards in the fashion that they did? 41-30, plus 11 on the glass, against an Alabama team that they had 6 offensive rebounds in the first half alone. I mean, they were creating some second chance looks for their team. They weren't falling, but then in the second half, that was a greater point of emphasis for the Duke team to make sure that, one, the shots aren't going to start falling, and then two, beyond that, that we're going to make sure you're only getting one shot per possession by closing this thing out by getting the rebound. Because size-wise, outside of the guards, in the front court, Alabama could match up a little bit with the bodies that Duke had down there.
Yeah, and I actually thought Grant Nelson held his own defensively against Cooper Flagg, but
Sure.
the rebounding thing, it's like that's something that's on the season. Duke has been a strong rebounding team if you look at the numbers, but there have been games, the Baylor game comes to mind, where we allowed the other team to dominate their offensive glass a little bit. But one thing I've noticed throughout the season is Scheyer has been really good at getting the team to clean that kind of stuff up at halftime for the most part. Like if there's a big problem that's jumping out from the box score to you, watch the second half and see if it doesn't get cleaned up.
Yeah, we started out the conversation talking about the greatness of Jon Scheyer, and here we are. We've kind of circled back around for another kind of feather in the cap, proving as to why he's been so great as this head coach for Duke. And it is those halftime adjustments that they're able to make. So Duke gets past Alabama, 85-65, the final score, 4 in double figures. Just all in all, really impressive performance for our Duke Blue Devils. And now there's an opportunity to move on to the Elite Eight, or to the Final Four, an opportunity to move on and play a team like Houston. I am really excited to kind of dive into this game and hear what jumps out to Raul in this matchup in particular, and we'll do that after we take our first break here on today's show. Lockdown Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's certainly easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery and things like that. Now I'm able to budget smarter and save more. It's all in one convenience, so you're not having to juggle multiple apps. You can use Monarch to see everything. Easy collaboration with all those other apps as well. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off for the first year. Once again, monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege. Monarch Money is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Our show today is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time Picks is the absolute best, where curation makes it easier to find better value for your tickets to sports, concert, comedy, theater events, and so much more. Easy ticket shopping where you're able to see amazing deals on some huge matchups that are coming up. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, here we go. We've got Raul Clement here from the Devil's Den podcast, talking Duke basketball in the Final Four, taking on Houston, a team that we saw in the Sweet 16 last year. Now we've got a chance to play them 2 rounds deeper in the Final Four for a chance to play in the national title game. It's the nation's top offense as of late in this Duke basketball team, the top defense as of late in Houston. Everybody's kind of fired up about the X's and O's and some of the big matchups that are set to be played in this one. What's the one thing that jumps out to you when you look at this game?
I mean, you got to start with Houston's defense. Number 1 in the country, and not by a small margin either. Yeah. And they really do everything well. They have the second best effective field goal percentage allowed. They're 5th best in protecting the 2-point area, 13th with 3-pointers. They've got the 5th best block percentage, 20th best turnover percentage. You know, it's really hard to score on them. They're they don't have a lot of height maybe at the center position, but they're a big team, kind of 2 through 4 or 5, and they're just kind of interchangeable. A lot of like 6'8", 6'4" to 6'8" guys who can just really switch every position. They trap the ball screens hard, and they just make it almost impossible for you to execute your offense if you're not really crisp.
Without a doubt, which is why I think you look at the matchup that Duke's got with Malawach on the inside, and then Cooper Flagg's size that he brings to the table, plus somebody like Pat Gamba, plus I think we're going to be a week further into kind of Malik Brown's return to play. Maybe he's got an added wrinkle for the Duke basketball team. Mason Gillis, a big player as well. He's been asked to do a lot in the post throughout the course of the season for this Duke team defensively. I think matchup-wise, we're going to be fine in that area as well.
Yeah, I mean, the size certainly does favor Duke, so that's a good thing. One thing to consider is that Houston is a really good offensive rebounding team.
Sure.
They're not maybe the most, appealing offense to watch, but they shoot the 3 really well, and they get offensive rebounds. And so those are just 2 things to concern yourself with. They don't take a lot of threes. So I think if I'm Scheyer, my main emphasis on guarding them would be, you got to get the defensive board. And hopefully, Kaman and Gongba and all these guys that have a lot of size on them should be able to do that.
Yeah, I think the question just becomes at that point, if they're going to be relying on the 3-point shot, we're again in a scenario like Alabama where those bigs are being pulled away from the basket. So you're asking more of your guards to go down and help in rebounding actions and that sort of thing. There are 2 teams left in the tournament that have 3 players in their starting backcourt that are shooting greater than 40% from 3-point range right now. That's Duke and Houston. It's 2 teams set to go head-to-head against one another. So they've got guards that are able to do it as well. Houston just doesn't have a Cooper Flagg on the floor. And then when you look further into the numbers, they're not a good 2-point shooting team in the grand scheme of things. And so like we saw Duke run Alabama off the 3-point line, I think it's going to be equally as important in a game like this for Duke to run Houston off that 3-point line.
Yeah, and another thing that jumps out to me is they're not a big assist team. If you look at their assists versus field goals made, they're kind of down near the bottom of the country there. So that to me indicates they like to do a lot of stuff in isolation, but I think that could actually benefit us because of how good Duke's 2-point defense is. So you just run them off the line, make them beat you one-on-one, which we tend to do to teams by switching a lot, and hopefully just force them into some tough mid-range shots and win the math battle that way.
Yeah, I love winning math battles. That's
Yeah.
what we've been doing a whole lot of this season,
Oh
man.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
that's
Especially in the
been
tournament.
no doubt about that. I mean, the way that we've been playing and kind of the margins that we've had,
Mhm.
the math's not been good for Duke's opponents. So
Yeah.
I hope that that continues. Looking at Duke offensively, though, to get into that a little bit more because we have been so effective. One, what are you seeing? Why do you think we've been able to be so effective offensively? And two, what's it going to take to kind of replicate that going into a game like this?
It's something that's really been ongoing for a couple months now. Duke had that period of time, kind of early middle of the season when they were really struggling to score. But then at some point, I think it was really around the Stanford game, if you want to look at it, something just clicked and all the ball movement and actions off of actions and all that stuff really started to pay dividends. And I know Scheyer said earlier in the year that he wasn't running a lot of stuff because he wanted to make sure the team could read and react instinctively. And I think that's what you're seeing right now. It's there's so many options and the players seem to read those options so well and so quickly that it's just pretty impossible for an opponent to defend it. And you could see that in the tournament field goal percentage, 56% from the field, 47% from three, just absurd efficiency. Had 260, 50, 80 games.
Yeah, the efficiency piece has been
Yeah.
incredible. I know that there are going to be games though that's not the
Yeah.
case. A Georgia Tech game, for
Yeah.
example, in the ACC tournament when you're not hitting anything and you're getting, like that obviously is out there. That's a possibility when these games play out, and that would be the most unfortunate time should that happen in Saturday's Final Four game or if Duke advances to a national championship game on Monday. But what I do like is the way that Duke has found other ways to win when the
Yep.
shots aren't falling from the outside, right? That they do have these added X factors going to the rim, lobs at the rim, able to make the common shooting, 87%, 20 for 23 so far in the tournament. And I can think of 2 missed dunks that he's had, right? So there's
Right.
2 of the 3 misses that he's had already. That brings me a little bit more confidence in that, okay, maybe the shots aren't falling. We at least have seen this Duke team find other ways to go and score.
Yeah, Kaman's been just such an important pressure release valve for Duke all year, but really especially lately. I mean, you think about the Arizona and Alabama games. How many times did Cooper or Khan or Proctor or whoever get into the middle and just lob it up for Kaman? And it puts the opponent in an impossible position because they
Yeah.
have to decide, do I step up to guard the layup here? Or do I sink back to guard Kaman? And especially with somebody like Khan Knipple, who's become such a good finisher, that's just like almost an automatic 2 points when Khan can get into the middle like that. And we'll see if he can do that against Houston because they're such a stout, impressive defense that they're going to want to take that away and they'll have game planned for that.
Without a doubt. I mean, that's going to be a big thing to figure out how Houston decides to defend this Duke team. What is kind of their formula if
Mhm.
they feel like is the best chance to win? The other thing I wanted to add with Duke and looking at the offense and listening to what Coach Scheyer has talked about, going back to Duke's early season and going back to those games against Kansas and Kentucky, I hear him talking about one, just not liking to go back and watch those games because to his eye, his
Yeah.
basketball loving brain, it just looks ugly to go back
Yeah.
and watch. I think a lot of that goes to the possessions that Duke was able to have, the tempo that they
Yep.
were certainly playing with, and the way that Duke has been able to get up and down and run the floor a little bit, but have the perfect mix because we didn't turn it into a track meet against Alabama. We made
Mhm.
sure we limited their possessions, but we're able to get kind of the big quick looks when the opportunity was there.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Duke's tempo, really since about the Illinois game, it's kind of dramatically increased. You have 3, 4, 5 games, 6 games actually over 70 possessions. Earlier in the year, you only had 3 games total before that, and those were the first 3 games of the season, and then everything was in the 60s. So, there's an anomaly there. The Baylor game was only 59 possessions, but that's a lot of offensive rebounds, so that'll slow it down too. In terms of Alabama, I thought Duke played a little bit into Alabama's hand in the first half by playing pretty fast. Now, Duke still had the 9-point lead at the break, so
Yeah.
great, you're good either way, but
Still
I thought there was a little
46-point half. Yeah, like you're
yeah.
yeah.
And then you see the second half, especially from like the 11-minute on mark to the end of the game, they really kind of took the air out of the ball and took Alabama out of their game. And I thought that was really smart, because what Alabama wanted and needed to do, especially when you're down 20, is get some quick shots up.
Yeah. And in so many cases, I know that people get so terrified when that happens. Like, why are you slowing it down in this moment? My dad's one of the biggest don't slow it down guys that's out there. But it worked. I mean, with this Duke team, the IQ that they have, knowing they're still going to get the good looks, that was the right play to be made to make sure this happens. The last thing I want to make here, and looking at this upcoming weekend, an X factor that is not really controllable by Duke, but I do want to hear your commentary here. I felt like, compared to the first weekend in the round of 64 and round of 32, the whistle was not going in Duke's favor in the Arizona or the Alabama game, which is totally out of the norm for a Duke basketball team when it comes to March Madness. So if there's a world in which, it maybe does sway back to Duke's, I'm not going to hate it. This Duke team, but I did find that really interesting, man, where this past weekend, it's like, man, there are some of these calls. I don't know what these refs are seeing, but it's really not going Duke's way.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to fight through that, and you have to kind of figure out on the fly how the game is being called. I didn't think Duke did a particularly good job of that against Arizona, which is why they ended up in foul trouble. That game was being called way too tightly for my taste. I thought Alabama was called a little bit better in the sense that it was a little freer. You hate when you're watching a game and just everybody's in foul trouble on both sides. And it just really, you're sending a lot of guys to the line. It's making the game less enjoyable to watch. It's making both teams not able to kind of roll out their ideal rosters the way they would. And, so I had more of a gripe with that one. But against Alabama, there were still some mystifying calls. I thought Cooper got cheated out of 2 blocks. There was one that was called for a foul, and there was another that was called the goaltending, and they never showed the goaltending one on review. So maybe I'm wrong on that. But the rest did go look at it, of course, but the goaltending wasn't overturned. And then the other one, it looked like a clean block on the replays.
Right.
Just little things like that I had gripes with.
And look, I hope that we don't have too many gripes once these games get closer and the margins get that much smaller and that sort of thing. So really excited to see it play out. Feeling good about Duke basketball going into this game against Houston in the Final Four. And hopefully we're going to be able to celebrate a national championship victory for the squad here. All right, Raul, let's step aside one more time out here on the program today. And then when we come back, we got to talk about an event happening tonight that involves the Duke basketball program. That is coming up here in just a moment on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Supply House is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Go support all that. I was on the latest episode of our Bracket TV Breakdown with Amazon Fire TV talking about Duke in the Final Four. It was myself and the host of Locked On Cougars. Parker Ainsworth, and then we had Zach Blackerby from Locked On Auburn, Brandon Olson from Locked On Gators. It was a really fun show, so go check that out and support our friends at Locked On College Basketball and the Bracket Breakdown Show with Amazon Fire TV. Let's get back to today's show. Raul Clement is here from the Devil's Den podcast, talking Duke basketball, talking about the McDonald's All-American game that's going to be happening a little bit later tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern in Brooklyn. 3 Duke Blue Devils are going to be there. That's now 95 all-time McDonald's All-Americans, the most of any school, man. And that's just fun to celebrate. That thought right there, that each and every year when you look at the premier event for guys that are set to come in to the college basketball game, Duke's been the one most represented all time.
Yeah, I love watching this event. It's not maybe the best, most intense basketball, but it's just your first chance to really see some of these prized recruits Duke has against competition that's on their level. You can catch a few high school games here and there throughout the year, but this is like a bigger stage.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it play out. It'll be the Boozer twins that are McDonald's All-Americans, and then Nicholas Kaminia is a McDonald's All-American as well. Shelton Henderson is the lone 5-star in the 247 composite rankings who did not make the McDonald's All-American game. So I don't know how that math added up when you're starting to build out the roster and that sort of thing, Raul. But Shelton might have got screwed over there. Feels like he deserved to be in that game.
Feel like there's always a snub.
Yeah.
Wasn't Con Knippel snubbed last year?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. The only players for Duke in last year's game were Cooper Flagg and Isaiah Evans.
And it doesn't seem to have hurt Con at all.
Yeah,
So maybe that can be a little chip on Henderson's shoulder. I don't know.
Well said. Yeah, that's going to fire him up. He's going to be ready to go for sure. That's fun to think about. I also want to give some love to Emily Skinner, Duke's lone representative from the women's side, who's going to be playing in the McDonald's All-American game a little bit later. And then there are 2 uncommitted players on the boys' side, and Nate Ament and Braden Burries. Obviously, Duke is in the Final 5 for Nate Ament. At one point, he was going to make his announcement today as to where he'd be playing college basketball. Duke is still in the mix, and now he has postponed that decision. This feels very much so like he's trying to see who's leaving, who's going, what are the roster opportunities going to look like. And for Duke being one of the schools in your top 5, you're not going to hear a lot of that information until once their season officially comes to a close.
Yeah, I mean, it may have slowed down his announcement, how long Duke's been playing, but that's a great thing for Duke fans, right? So all I'll say is that Ament has visited Duke like a dozen times at this point. I've seen him at 7 or 8 games myself.
Right.
So, read into that what you will, but he certainly likes Duke. Now, whether he goes there may be some other factors. So, but he can take as much time as he wants, and maybe it's better to kind of wait until the spotlight is off Duke in the tournament, just kind of make it some guys like to make the announcement into a big thing.
For sure. I mean, if he commits to Duke right now, incredible, but that's not the big story that everyone wants. We got a Final Four to go and play in and that sort of thing. So certainly going to lose some headlines there. 6'9", 180, Nate Ament from Highland School in Virginia, a Final 5 of Duke, Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisville, and Tennessee. We will see if Duke ultimately secures his commitment and what the transfer portal begins to offer for the Blue Devils. I'm just excited, though, that we get to wait a little bit longer and we get to see these Final Four games play out and let the season continue. We know for a fact, at most, we only have 6 days left with this Duke basketball team. So let's make sure we enjoy all of them, right?
Yeah, man, it's been a special, special season. And I hope fans realize that no matter what happens this weekend, win or lose, I mean, praying it's a win, but you can't take away what Duke has done this season. Historic numbers, 35 wins, historic KenPom rating, best since 1999. Just a fun product to watch on the floor. I've had a blast watching them. Not only do they compete hard, but they play a beautiful brand of basketball with a lot of ball movement and player movement. Just great stuff.
And to your point, all the behind the scenes footage that we're seeing, it's so clear how much they love each other and the camaraderie that they've got. It's incredible. So want to see that continue on for sure. Raul, thanks for being here today, man. It's always great to see you. I do want you to have this opportunity, though. Tell us about the Devil's Den podcast and how people can support you guys.
Yeah. You can find us on thedevilsden.com. That's the recruiting website. There's a link to the podcast there. You can also obviously find us on like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that stuff. We tend to put out 2 episodes a week during the season. During the off season, we go a little bit lighter, like maybe 1 a week. We're not the workhorses that you are, but we try to bring quality, even if we can't bring the quantity. So
It's still a great show, and I definitely want people to go check it out. Good to see you, man. We'll do this again soon, okay?
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. That's Raul Clement joining us here on today's program of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, thanks so much for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review on the Apple Podcast platform. And we'll be back at it again tomorrow, talking all things Final Four. Duke is still playing basketball. Enjoy the McDonald's All-American game tonight. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you then. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.